Good evening, morning, afternoon, whenever you find it most convenient to listen to the Bonfire. Woo! Insert clapping and applause noises. Austin probably won't do that, but that's perfectly fine as I am joined by my co-hosts DJ.
I have osteoporosis.
As well as Tim.
I do not. I thought the Bonfire intro was interesting this time because before you made it seem more like I don't know. It had sort of like an indie slow, like plot moving vibe, and this time it had like a indie horror movie vibe. So maybe we're just like rotating genres with the intro, which is kind of cool. I'm here for it.
Yeah, that is true. Which, speaking of horror, I've rewatched a movie that is a psychological thriller horror kind of esque vibe, being Get Out, for a film project. So I guess I'm just kind of in that mood. Anyways. As always, I'm Alan the Pole with a goal, and that goal is to actually go to a game this season because of the 2 home games that have happened, life has prevented me from going to both of them. But that's beside the point.
I mean, it's the point to me. The Fire are worse off without your presence.
I guess. So, let's just get right into the news, shall we? So, a few little points of news before we get into, as I always say, the meat of the game. Roster rule change. Reported by Tom Bogert and The Athletic, there is going to be a roster rule change coming sometime around the summer, and it's surrounding specifically the U22 initiative slots, as well as like the DP rule. Tim, you're kind of the roster rule sicko of Men in Red. Could you like tell us a bit of how this stuff works?
Yeah, so essentially up to this point, MLS teams either have 1 U22 spot or 3 U22 spots. U22 spots allow teams to sign players with an unlimited transfer fee coming in. So that means you can get like a pretty like promising young talent. There is a cap on how much you can pay them. Basically, whatever like it's called like the maximum salary hit is, and there's different terms for it, but it's around $680K a year this year. So that's how Federico Navarro came in. That's how Alonso Estevez came in last year. That didn't work out that great. That's how John Duran came in for the Fire. The other use for those slots is you can sign an existing player to his second MLS deal and pay them up to $200K more than that level. That's what happened to Guti in the offseason. He is now getting paid, probably more than that $680K figure. Could be up to about $880K. But the issue is the number of slots you had was dependent on how you use your designated player slots. If you had 2 designated players, you had all 3. If you had 3 designated players, you had 1 U22 slot unless one of 2 things was true. And I know this is incredibly complicated, and this is why we hate MLS roster rules. But if you had 3 designated players and one was called a YDP. That's a designated player that is under, I believe, 23 or 24 years of age.
I'm pretty sure it's 23.
I'm pretty sure it's 23 in that year. So it doesn't really matter if they were born in, March or April or September. If you were born in 2001, you could be a YDP this year. If you were born in 2000 or earlier, you would not. Then you had all 3 slots as long as one player was young, so 23 or under. The other way is if the third designated player is making an amount of money where they don't have to be a designated player. They could be what's called a TAM player. So that's like Rafa Chijos. And that's what the Fire did, where essentially Gaston Jimenez was a designated player, moved to what's called a TAM level player, and then moved back to being a designated player, essentially because it frees up some cap space for the team. And that still keeps all 3 U22 slots available for the Fire. In the future, it sounds like, and this hasn't been confirmed by the league or anything like that, but it sounds like as of this summer, all 3 spots will be available to all teams under all circumstances, which is great. It never really made sense to have some roster slots available or not available based on what other parts of the roster are doing, because it unnecessarily restricts flexibility. It meant that teams couldn't sign some players they wanted to sign, that sometimes they couldn't trade a player they wanted to trade. Like it made things unnecessarily complicated. So any simplification of the roster rules, I'm 100% here for it.
Amen, I say to that. I remember when I heard about the whole U22 initiative thing as well. I was trying to wrap my head around it. And once you're in the league and follow the league for a while, you sort of wrap your head around it. But like, it's definitely for new players, or new fans, it's gonna be like, what? And that does overcomplicate things. So a bit of an untying of the huge knot and amalgamation of knots that is MLS roster rules, I guess.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that I think we should give credit to the Fire for. They definitely had a major hit with John Duran. Selling the guy for as much money as they did was huge. But I think you're going to see a lot more MLS teams using the U22 slots the way that the Fire did with Guti, where there was always this issue where if you had a homegrown player, they would hit the roster, the salary cap, like a very low number. But then if their deal was about to expire, teams were kind of stuck because you couldn't really keep them on a roster-friendly deal. Or a salary cap friendly deal on the roster without, you just couldn't because they were aging out of their homegrown player deal. So the ability to sign a guy to a second deal really does help, I think, a lot of teams maximize the use of those slots. And Guti, potentially could have gone to a Liga MX team or maybe a team in Belgium or somewhere like that over the past year when and he could have been sold for a certain amount of money, 7 figures, but Guti's potential is higher. I don't think anyone really thinks that he's reached his full potential yet. But in previous years, the Fire wouldn't have really had a way to keep him around long-term on a way that was friendly for the salary cap. This use of the U22 slot lets them do that. And unlike the way that we gambled, where it's you rolled the dice on Alonso Estevez and it didn't work out, you rolled the dice on John Duran and it did work out. Guti is a proven player in this league and it lets the Fire keep him longer. I think that's a way that we're going to see these slots used a lot more, regardless of whether or not teams have 1 or 3 of them with this roster rule change.
Yeah, continue utilizing the homegrowns and the younger players that are coming up from the academy and the lower levels up to the major level of MLS and off into the world, possibly. So, yeah, love that. Clears up definitely one point of amalgamation that is very difficult to wrap your head around, especially if, like I said, you're a newer fan. We do have some points of movement. First point of movement is terms of national team call-ups. We have one senior call-up right now that is Xherdan Shaqiri. He's going to Switzerland. Well, not to Switzerland because Switzerland will be playing in Denmark and then in Ireland. So he's going with Switzerland to play for those games, which will be held. Well, the first game's on the 23rd, so this upcoming Saturday, and then the next game is the 26th. So Shaqiri won't be available for the game against the Revolution. Next up is Sergio Ariel Jr. He is called up to the U19 men's youth national team for the United States, and Chris Brady has been added to the Olympic team roster in place of Gaga Slonina, who had to withdraw because of an injury, if I remember correctly. So one Fire alum is being replaced with a Fire current for the national team.
I like Brady getting called up finally.
I know it's something that he'd said in the preseason that he'd been in talks with the U.S. U23s or Olympic team. It's sort of weird how they're sort of the same thing, but sort of aren't. So, yeah, it's fantastic to see him get called up. It's something that, and again, I think that there was a big question about whether or not the Fire would release Brady and Guti if they were called up to the youth national teams, because unlike a senior call up, they're under no obligation to do so. So it's awesome kind of that we're seeing that actually happen.
Yeah, good on him. Good on him. Because I know, like you mentioned, we had both Brady and Guti being called up, but the Fire have denied both of them going. So a lot of people were like, what the heck is up with that? So, good on them. One thing we also wanted to quickly shout out before we move on to the last piece of news, the US Open Cup. As we know already, the Fire first team as themselves are not participating in the competition, but the B team, Chicago Fire 2, will be participating, and that game will actually be this upcoming Wednesday. So in 2 days time as we're recording this.
Maybe the day that it's that you're listening when it comes out or after.
True.
I mean, you could listen to this whenever you want, but
that's true. I mean, heck, you can go ahead and listen to the first episode of the podcast if you want to. It won't really match up time wise. So it's like we said, Wednesday. It's at 7 p.m. The Fire 2 are playing Chicago City SC, so it's a little Chicago derby. It is free all around. There is free parking as well as free entrance. Specifics, I can't really talk too much about, mainly because I've been to like one Fire 2 game, so it's not exactly like going to an Open Cup game when the Fire normally play at Bridgeview. So I don't know about like the specifics of like tailgating and concession, all of that stuff. Tim probably knows, and he can also talk about some of the Fire 1, so the Fire first team players that are also available.
Yeah, so in general, at Fire 2 matches, and again, I don't know if this is true for the Open Cup match. I suspect that it will be, given that it's also free. There are no concessions for sale. I believe that tailgating wasn't technically allowed. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure if they've sort of loosened that. It would not surprise me if they were a little flexible with that last part on Wednesday. But once you're in the match, no concessions, so no food or drink available. You traditionally, with Fire 2 games, are allowed to bring in one sealed bottle of water. So it has to be like a factory sealed bottle. Essentially, they want to make sure that it's really water and not, you sneaking in another clear liquid. And that's that. But I mean, it should be a lot of fun. I think a lot of us are disappointed that the Fire's first team isn't competing in the Open Cup, but I think it's really important to recognize that none of the people that are playing on Wednesday were involved in that decision, and the people that are playing on Wednesday are still there to compete and to win. So Chicago City SC has a variety of teams locally that are available to compete. The team that is going to be playing on Wednesday is technically their USL2 team. So that's sort of like a high level, sort of like quasi pre-professional team. So like typically it's like college students and so on that are not getting paid, but play games in the summer when they're not in school to preserve their NCAA eligibility while at the same time competing at a high level. So it should be a good game. Fire 2 just had their first game on Sunday, the Sunday before recording. They ended up making it it was tied after regulation. They won on PKs because MLS Next Pro has no draws.
It's very similar to hockey, where they go into a PK and then whoever wins gets the extra point.
Exactly. So they've got 2 points to start their season. They played on it was a decent game. Like you could see there was still a little bit of rust, but I think the rust, you could see it wearing off through the game. They play a kind of different style than what the Fire first team plays. They played it at a 4-3-3. Really, it was more of a 3-4-3 in practice. So it was a higher pressing style, high tempo. They have legitimately one of the better goal scorers in MLS Next Pro in Omari Glasgow, who is a full Guyanese international, and will be making his U.S. Open Cup debut, unless I'm really mistaken. I don't think he made an appearance last season with Fire 1.
I don't recall him doing so.
I don't believe he did. I don't think he made a first team appearance at all last year. So it should be a good, good team. They made the playoffs last year. They kind of snuck in. Another unique thing about MLS Next Pro is that the teams at the top get to pick a team that they want to play. And of the lower seeded teams that were available to be picked as an opponent, Fire 2 were the one that nobody wanted to pick, which I think says something about the way that people see the squad. And so, like I said, it should be a good game, and people that are there are competing to win. There's roster rule restrictions because some people have talked about, well, why don't we just send down like first team players and have them play in the Open Cup? This was kind of anticipated. I can say that there was a series of discussions between MLS and the U.S. Soccer Federation about what the rules would be around this. As it turns out, the restrictions are more or less there to ensure that the team that you see on Wednesday is similar to the team that played last Sunday in the like league match and will play again on Friday in the league match. So MLS first team players are available to be sent down under a few conditions, one of which is they have to be making under a certain amount of money. Basically, not that like TAM or DP players that we talked about earlier. They have to be averaging under 15 minutes a game with the first team, and the loan has to be for 90 days. Although I think a lot of us are kind of like questioning what exactly a 90-day loan means, because loans happen all the time and then are shortened. My understanding is that the intention is for it to be a genuine 90-day loan. So Fire first team players that are eligible to be selected in the Open Cup are Tom Barlow, Javier Casas Jr., Jonathan Dean, Brian Dowd, Jeff Gall, Georgios Cusias, Federico Navarro, Wyatt Omsberg, Sergio Orhel Jr., Spencer Ritchie, Arnaud Souquet, and Carlos Theron. I would be surprised if more than 3 or 4 of those were sent down. It can be a max of 7. I think that is just based on the financial and minute eligibility rules that is like that list that it was sent by the Fire. So we'll see. The team has to announce it by Tuesday, the day before the game at 2 p.m., which is probably after you're listening to this. So you probably know exactly who's going to be available for the Fire too. We do not.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine Carlos Theron facing off and trying to body someone in an USL 2 side?
He's a very big man in going against a league that does not have a lot of super tall people. I mean, that's another thing that kind of hits you when you're watching MLS Next Pro. Just like it doesn't seem like players that are like, 19, 20, 21, 22 should be like smaller than players in MLS, because like it doesn't make sense. But like definitely Carlos Theron would tower over the vast majority of the MLS Next Pro squad that played on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then the last bits. Sorry, DJ.
I think it's safe to say Casas, Dowd, Gall, and Orhel are all going to be loaned down. Other than that, it would not be shocking to see Souquet as well, if he's within the parameters.
He is within the parameters. This list is from the Fire about players that are available. I think that you're right. I would be shocked to see anyone else. But we'll see. And again, just like the one thing I know you want to move on, Alan, and you're right because we're running long on this. But
right.
If you're free, like come out. It's a free game. The quality of MLS Next Pro has improved year on year. I expect that the team is better this year. They have a coach that I think does play an interesting style that can be really effective. They've got players that can score some beautiful goals. And like, come on, it's a free game of soccer.
Amen. I say to that. And like Tim said, it's free. And also, we have our opinions about the US Open Cup and how important it is to the team, especially teams like the Fire and to fans of the Fire. So, if you want the world, or at least MLS and the USSF to know that, come out and support. Come out and support our Men in Red 2. So, moving on to the big portion of the episode is, of course, the game that happened last Saturday, the one and only matinee game of the season, if I'm correct. And that's going to be at Soldier Field.
Yes, correct. Yeah, only home game.
It's the only home game that is a matinee game, and that was against CF Montreal. What a game, first of all. As I mentioned, I wasn't able to go to that game. I had to teach at the kids choir that I have. Normally, I told them I would like to not be, or if I could not go that or not teach that day, and they were like, not only would we like you to come, but we also need you to come earlier. So I was like, at least I'm getting a bit of extra money for that. But besides the point, there were 2 very early penalties in the game for Montreal, both of which were conceded by newer players, Aragoni and Solquest. Could you sort of talk us through that?
Yeah, so for starters, I think that this was a game where the refereeing, I don't want to say they got either of the calls necessarily wrong. the timing on both the calls, I think, was pretty rough. Like, I don't know. Did you get a chance to rewatch the game at all?
I was able to watch highlights, and for the first penalty that was conceded by Aragoni, they didn't really show what happened. All of a sudden, it's sort of cut to the referee, and he's like talking on the earpiece, and then he like showed penalty. The second one, I saw Sahlquist essentially just was doing a little, basically a little bit of a shovey, and the Montreal player fell, and the ref called a penalty for that.
Just inside the box, yeah. And the first
just
one, Aragoni,
inside the box.
Yeah, the first one, Aragoni, it was a tussle. To be honest, from my exact angle in my seats, I didn't have the best view of it. I think what was sort of confusing was that play went on, and I was like, oh, well, that looked like it could have been something. But I mean, I guess I'm like, I legitimately thought, oh, is he going to call it? No, he's not. And then I remember thinking, there's no way he's going to call it now. And then it was called. So it's like one of those things where the replacement refs are just like the timing of them is just like off. And it just really is sort of like affecting the tone of the game. I mean, and it wasn't just the like big calls like that, and we'll get into the rest of them, but like, well, I'll just leave it there for now. I don't ultimately think that either of the penalties was necessarily a like bad call from the officiating crew, but the way that we got there was just confusing as heck.
Yeah, and that's a thing we're seeing from referees across the league, that while some of the calls aren't wrong, they're just taking a while to like figure out what is just going on. And it's the same, and it's especially the case with VAR, that it's just taking a really long time for like anything to be cleared up, or for anything to really be done, I guess. Or like calls are coming, like you said, calls are coming a bit too late.
Yeah. So I got a question for you, DJ. I don't know if you got a chance to watch the game, but like, did you like those first two penalties against the Fire? I mean, do you kind of agree with like what we're saying? Like that it's not necessarily that you can say the call was wrong, but it just felt like a very weird process to get to that call.
The first one, definitely. I remember watching it. I was like, why are they going to VAR for? It was Gasper's call was extremely soft. Sahlquist, okay, yeah, that is a card. Yeah, that's fine. But Gasper's, it was like he went to strike the ball without knowing the guy was there. So that's kind of a harsh call. But the fact that he had to go through VAR and had to do all that, it was extremely confusing to watch.
And it was a number of minutes too between, like, the VAR review itself took a long time.
I mean, that's probably why they added how many minutes into the second half? They added 10 again, I think it was.
I think it was 12. It was 10 or 11. I can't remember on the second half. They added, it was like, I want to say 9 minutes on the end of the first half, which again, like, yeah, when you're spending that long on reviewing these calls, like, sure, like, that's fair. But like, if this had been a different refereeing crew, you have to think, like, you know, there wouldn't have needed to be that much stoppage time.
True. All right. And then after the penalties, and like we mentioned, the extremely long extra time in the 52nd minute of the first half. So this is what, 7-8 minutes into extra time.
Yeah, 45 plus 7. Yeah.
Yeah, 45 plus 7. We had a long ball that reached its way to Maren Haile-Selassie near the right side, slots it past the keeper to make it 1-2. And it brought the Fire ever so closer back into that wonderful comeback that no one knew that was going to come about, you know, because we're so used to the saying, you know, that a 2-goal lead is a dangerous game unless you're the Fire. I'm pretty sure, because it feels like whenever we have a 2-goal lead, it immediately
unless you're
goes
playing
down
the Fire, I think you mean, right? Like, if you're playing the Fire, a 2-goal lead is safe.
Yes. Well, in that sense. But no, it put one back and showed that I guess the Fire had some semblance of attack going on.
And by the way, Rafa Chihos had the assist on that one.
Yes.
And like, I think all of us were concerned with his play after the first few games of the season. I don't want to say that he like blew the lights out or anything like that was with his performance on Saturday, but I think that it was a lot more like the Rafa Chihos that we have come to expect. Not, and not the Rafa Chihos that we'd seen so far in 2024. So it's really refreshing to see Rafa sort of like coming back and being that same performer like he was when he was wearing the armband.
Yeah. All right. And then getting into the second half, we saw a bit of basically just a bit of passing from Montreal inside the box. It looked just smooth as, and they put the ball past Brady fairly easily around the 69th minute, 70th minute to make it again a 2-goal lead for Montreal. It was pinball, honestly, just seeing, because it came from, I'm watching the highlights as, just so I can refresh my memory. It came from a throw in and it ping pong back between like 4 different Montreal players. And yeah, just wow.
And at that point, I think that a lot of people in the stadium thought it was going to be lights out because, it's bad, second half, like midway through the second half, down 2 goals. And that's traditionally been when like the game was done and dusted for the Fire. And it was interesting to see. I mean, to be honest, like you said, like it's like one of those goals you're like, well, like that's that, just because they were just kind of like outplayed and outworked at multiple phases of it. The Montreal has a new head coach, Laurent Courtois. He is expected to eventually play a style sort of similar to what Wilfried Nancy played, both when he was at Montreal as well as, in Columbus. Possession based, willing to build slowly, pass the ball to create that opening. And so far they haven't really been playing that style, but I think this was an example of them sort of like working their way into it.
Yeah, and the goal scorer, Dominic Yankov, he went over to the supporter section, put it and like taunted him, put his finger in his ears, like, wow. I mean, I would have been like completely down and out if I wasn't at the game. And who was it? Was it Alex that like texted when it was, or he tweeted when it was 3-1? That was like, this is pretty much it.
Well, this is one of those tweets that ages really well.
Amen, I say to that. Amen, I say to that. So, right after the goal, or maybe not right after, but this was around the, what was this? This is the 82nd minute. We had a red card, straight red for Raheem Edwards, and Montreal, in the final 8 minutes of regulation, were down to 10 men.
Former Fire player, Raheem Edwards, by the way.
Yes.
Off topic, I would love to hear Raheem Edwards talk about his time in the Fire. That red card probably about sums it up.
Yeah, I think that's a fair perspective. So he did the Fire a solid. You could argue that maybe he owed the Fire that after some of the things, but he had been in the match for what, like under 20 minutes at that point. He was a mid second half sub. I'm gonna say he came on like the 65th minute or so. So it's one of those, you had a short outing, and you managed to make it shorter. Yeah,
he came in the 65th minute and, left in the 82nd for, if I remember correctly, was an elbow.
Yeah, that seems right. Yeah, I mean, so it's one of those things where, like, again, like, I think that did look like a red to me. I think that it was certainly a physical game on both sides, and I think that both teams could probably point to 2 or 3 times that happened and it wasn't, not that exactly, but something on that scale happened that wasn't called. So, I mean, again, back to the refereeing.
Yeah. And then from that moment on, Brian Gutierrez was the one to take the penalty, clean slot to the right to make it, again, a 1-goal difference with 6 minutes. It's in regulation, which had me thinking when I saw the live score and I saw the pop-up on my phone that Brian scored it. I was like, why didn't Hugo Cuypers take the penalty instead? Usually it's the striker or the forward that takes the penalty.
Right, especially because like Shaqiri, all right, like Shaqiri is a very reliable PK taker. Like he said in a post-match interview that he's never missed. I meant to look that up, but I could not verify that. But he's been very reliable from this spot. So, like,
Sure.
fine, maybe you give it to him. He's the captain.
Yeah, but from that point on, he was already subbed out for Gutierrez, who came in the 69th minute.
Exactly. So you're thinking, like, this has to be the Cuypers' chance for his first goal. And yet it wasn't. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not at all mad that Guti already has matched his, like, the number of goals that he had in 2023. Like, I'm not mad about that at all. It's just, it seemed like an odd choice when you pay 8 figures to bring a striker here and then you're not letting him take PKs.
True. Yeah. So,
for reference, Shaqiri has missed 1 PK in his career.
Who was it against?
May 13th, 2018, against Swansea.
Of course, DJ just knew that.
I just looked it up on Transfer Market.
Thank you
enough.
for the quick fact check, DJ. So at that point, we've reached the end of regulation, 9 minutes of added time, and that is when the two other newest acquisitions of the squad have showed their stuff. You had a sort of like a lob cross into the box from Kellyn Acosta. It gets headed around, a little bit of a mess. Cuypers slots it for his first Chicago Fire goal.
It was great. I mean, it was a good goal. Like, it's exactly the kind of goal that I think that we wanted Cuypers to be scoring when he was brought in. Like, it was a ball that made it in the box, didn't really look like it was particularly dangerous necessarily. Like, there was coverage around the area. Like, it was a garbage goal, to, like, use a hockey term. You know what I mean? Like, it was
because I'm sort of watching it the highlight frame by frame. Like I said, Kellyn just boots it in there. It gets headed forward by I think Haile-Selassie, and then it sort of just falls right in front of him. And as he's falling, just on his right foot, just boots it up, and it hits the ceiling of the net. So yeah, it's a sloppy goal, but it's the goals that we want him to score. Because in seasons past with other strikers, we would get the ball into the box, into that area, and then it just sort of ping-pongs its way out. Either it gets cleared or shot far for a goal kick or maybe even a corner kick. But no, that one gets shot up into the ceiling of the net.
And that's exactly what you want to see, right? Like, that's
amen.
And on top of that, I think something that we've seen in the matches that Cuypers hasn't scored is, like, he does have some of the clubs in his bag that we were told that he really didn't. Like, he's been decent at hold-up play. Like, he's had goal line clearances. Like I don't know what he was doing making goal line clearances or why he was all the way on that side of the pitch. But the fact that he can do them, I think, is, like, says something about the fact that he's not just, like, people made it out like he was like a one-dimensional player, and clearly that's not the case.
Amen. We love a good multi-tool. And then, of course, the moment that everyone, truly, I think everyone in world soccer / football have been talking about. It's been pretty much shared everywhere. 98th minute, so it was the last minute even of added time. Chris Brady passes the ball forward to Kellyn Acosta, who is sort of right around the center circle in our half. He just sort of launches the ball forward, and it's floating, It hits the hands of Jonathan Sierra and just boop into the net.
It was incredible to see. Like, the wind caught the ball at an amazing angle. There's videos online. The Fire asked for people to send theirs. It's an incredible bend on it, and it's 100% because of the wind. I mean, I'm not trying to, like, take credit away from Acosta here, but, like, it just, the wind caught that ball and it did something crazy. And the thing is, like, if you look at Sirois' face while it was like the wind was starting to catch it, you can see that he realizes what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a hand on it, but it just isn't enough because he's just, been taking steps forward.
Yeah. I've been sort of arguing or commenting with other people on social media because some people are saying this is your average MLS banger of a goal, but at the same time, goalkeeping howler, saying that if he just let the ball bounce, it would have bounced over the net. I personally think that if it did bounce, it would probably just still bounce into the net. But yeah, like you mentioned, he just misjudged the wind completely. And yeah.
And I don't think like legitimately like with that much wind, like those kinds of things happen in every league around the world. Like I don't think it says anything about Sirwell's quality. He made a bad choice. Like that happens sometimes. But like, he was caught out. Like if he had stayed deeper, like he would have done better. He didn't, like, and I don't think that's because he's necessary. Like there are goals that are maybe not exactly like that because the wind was incredible, but that are similar even without the wind in every league in the world.
Yeah, and Sirwell made 6 saves, 5 inside the box during that game. So yeah, no, we're not putting down his ability. That's just a true MLS moment, honestly. I'll say that.
I mean, it was fun to watch and look, the refereeing made this game less enjoyable because there were weird stoppages and like you're like, oh, the play's going on, they're not going to call that, and then the play is called and you're like, what the hell is going on? But like on the whole, 7 goals in the game, like down 2 goals, pull it back a little bit, down 2 goals again, manage to tie it up, manage to get a win out of it. Like that's just like that's crazy. Like
yeah.
And I think if you're a neutral or if you're a Fire fan, like you're just like
you're going nuts. Yeah, you're going crazy. And MLS even mentioned that with the goals in the 84th, 95th, and 99th minute, the Fire are the first team in MLS history to win in regulation, trailing 2+ goals in the 84th minute or later. So this truly was the latest of comebacks. And even Brady managed to get an assist, right?
On the last goal with Kellyn Acosta, yeah, because the ball went from Brady directly to Kellyn, and then directly to the hands of Jonathan Squaw, and then to the back of his net.
Yeah, no. And like, DJ, do you remember if there was like a Fire goalkeeper assist as of late?
Last one was Sean Johnson back in 2012. He assisted Chris Rolfe, which it is an old record when you have the names Sean Johnson and Chris Rolfe in the same sentence.
Hey, Sean Johnson is still playing.
Yeah, but he was with the Fire before. When Sean Johnson left the Fire, basically, if I remember correctly, Obama was still in office, and when Chris Rolfe left the Fire, Frank Yallop had just taken over.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time. That's for sure.
Yeah, no. That's wow. Just wow. A lot of records, and of course Hugo Cuypers and Kellyn Acosta get their goals as well.
I mean, look, one of the knocks that people have said, like the reason that Chris Brady hasn't made like a big giant move to Europe is because of his ability to like play the ball with his feet. Getting an assist like has to help.
True.
Even if arguably it's a secondary assist to the win.
No. Which speaking of, I'm sorry. I saw MLS posts about like goal of the match day, and they didn't include that goal. And a lot of Fire fans have commented saying like, where is Kellyn Acosta's goal and everything like that. And I commented, I vote Kellyn Acosta assisted by Chris Brady and the Windy City.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, the Windy City getting the MLS assist is an amazing call.
Yes. Yeah. So I love that. And I remember seeing some comments that was like confirmed the Windy City is windy. I also saw some comments because this got shared everywhere. I'm pretty sure like Bleacher Report shared it, ESPN, Barstool.
Whoa. Can you say that again? The name of the outlet?
Where ESPN FC?
No. The one with the report in the name.
Is that Bleacher?
Yes,
Report?
it's
Yes.
Bleacher Report.
Why did I
say
say
what bleachers are?
Someone check off the Tim roasting Alan bingo slot or something like that.
I mean, dude, bleachers, like the band, the bleachers, like the thing that is like at your high school. Like
this is the thing that's going to get clipped from this episode. I swear, it's going to be this.
As it should.
Alan is used to the choir, not anything that would require bleachers.
That's fair.
I mean, English is my second language. Technically, it's hard. It's
fair.
hard.
That's fair. I'm sorry for making fun of an
That's what
English
she
language
said.
learner.
Yeah, no. The thing I was going to say is that a lot of people who saw the goal from all these different outlets have also commented on the Fire's new goal sound. Previously, it was like that sort of like 1920s work whistle, steam work whistle, which was like, okay. Now it's a siren, but like a tornado siren, maybe even an air raid siren. And people were like, Chicago got the nuke siren for real.
Yeah.
That brought back flashbacks, and not in a good way.
Well, that's true, because I know one thing I remember was a conversation about the goal sirens was the possibility of having like maybe like a fire truck or that kind of siren, but apparently they said they can't because it would cause like confusion around the stadium as if there was like a first responder or vehicle like that. And it's like, I mean, hearing a tornado or an air raid siren probably wouldn't, but then I thought back to, I think some NFL teams use like sirens like that for like kickoffs or just in general. I think I remember. So I don't know what the rule is with that.
So what's sort of funny is like this is happening like earlier in the week. There was a tornado warning around like St. Louis's like training facility at some point. And there was a recent player that like just arrived here from Europe that was like, they were like inside the building, like in the locker room, like whatever they were like by training. And he's like, I thought it was a fire alarm. So I went outside and then the siren was coming from outside. And he just like didn't know what a tornado warning was, which like makes sense. But
welcome to MLS.
Yep.
He became a modern, common Midwestern dad.
That's true. It's true.
I hear the tornado sirens. Hang on, let me get my camera and beer.
Let me get my lawn chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it ain't coming towards me, I don't care.
Yeah. It's the same kind of welcome to MLS moment that Hugo Lloris got. You know, he came in, you know, he said he's going to play for LAFC, thinking he's going to get warm weather and sunshine. Next thing you know, he's playing in Utah with snow.
Yep.
Love that for him. Anyways, we're going to move on to our next section, but we're going to transition because we have someone waiting. All right, we're back. Transitions are difficult. Hopefully we'll clean that up in post, Austin. Look who we found. We found this really cool New England Revolution's beat writer for pro soccer, Caleb Pongratz. How have you been, man?
I'm really good. It's really nice to be on here. Really nice to join you guys today. I'm excited for the upcoming match and excited to talk footy with you guys.
So talking about the upcoming match, before the match actually gets started, I have to ask about the new tradition that the Revs seem to have brought upon themselves this year, where as far as I can tell, what you guys do is take like a box of stuff, like a box of like, there was like some show where like people buy rejected goods from like Amazon and try reselling them. It seems like it's like that. They put a team logo on it and they drop it on the ground, not even in like a kiddie pool, but like on the ground 30 miles inland from Boston Harbor. And I have to say, in league play, I don't know if they do this before CONCACAF Champions Cup matches. My guess is no. In league play, they're 0-4 since that's happened. And I don't know if that's necessarily a coincidence, but I think it's worth investigating.
Yeah, it's an interesting new tradition. It's new as of this year. The Revs marketing team really wanted to symbolize the tossing of the T out of the fort. That's the Revs fan section there. And it coincides with our kit, which is the Boston Tea Party kit that coincides with the 250th, I think it's 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party. We're a meme. It's a meme. It's really bad. I don't like it. A lot of people didn't even know it was happening from what I'm told. They kind of just sent one of our homegrown player legends, Scott Caldwell, who just retired, into the stands with the fans to throw that box out of the stands. And Scotty didn't deserve that. It was pretty bad. But yeah, coincidentally, Revs are 0-4 to start the season. Not a good look. It's pretty bad. It's worst start since 2001.
So in league play though, because you guys are also in CONCACAF Champions Cup play, where you guys have like one of 3 MLS teams to advance this far.
Correct. Yeah. So the Revs in MLS play are 0-4. They have a -7 goal differential. They have 3 goals for, 10 against, 2 goals from Carlos Gil, 1 from Giacomo Brioni. However, coinciding with that, they're 3 wins, 1 draw, 0 losses in the CONCACAF Champions League Cup, where they have a +8 goal differential, 9 goals for, 1 goals against. I would say that their record in MLS play definitely coincides with the busy schedule that they've had to start the season. They've had 8 games in 26 days. That's quite a busy schedule to start the year. It's clear that the focus is definitely on Champions Cup play. And I've had a lot of people talk to me and remind me of the Seattle Sounders team a couple years ago that went quite far. I believe it was in Champions League play, where they started the season in the West as one of the worst teams, yet still progressed very far in the playoffs. I think it was the 2014 or 15 year, if I'm not mistaken off the top of my head. But I think this Revs team's kind of in a similar route. I think that if they get eliminated in the next round of the Champions Cup, that it will maybe shift our focus more towards MLS play. But overall, I think I'm not worried. I don't think anyone should be worried. I don't think fans should be worried. Writers, team, some people are already calling for Caleb Porter's head. People are overreacting. I think that this team has a lot of utilities, a lot of weapons, and can do a lot in the East. But it's going to take time, and I think over time the Revs will prove that they're a team to be scared of.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned how a lot of the focus is on the Champions Cup, and the Revs are one of 3 MLS teams. The other 2 teams are the Columbus Crew and Miami, and I know we sort of said very similar things in terms of teams that are playing, of course, both league play and intercontinental play, because the way our season started was also against pretty much teams that were winning things, both MLS Cup and Supporter Shields, and also playing in that and like talking how are they going to balance that. And, I guess part of the reason why maybe it's that balancing isn't working out for both, for the Revs is maybe, coaching wise. And I know before we started, you mentioned how people were already talking to you about firing Caleb Porter. And it's like, it's kind of too early to call, isn't it?
Yeah, I find it kind of crazy because if you think about the Champions Cup, really, the Revs can consider themselves as one of the current top 8 best teams in the continent. If you really think about it, they're going up against Club America in the quarterfinals. They're the 7-time CONCACAF Champions Cup champions. They're a Liga MX side that is usually in the upper half, top 5. Pretty sure they're in the top 3 right now if they're not in first. If the Revs get past Club America after playing the first leg at home, shockingly, and then away at the Azteca, people realize that Caleb Porter is not an issue.
Yeah.
If Caleb Porter was an issue, we would not be in the quarterfinals.
So, yeah, I mean, to be fair, and I'm not trying to knock the Revolution's performance down a peg, but they were one of the teams that had the advantage of playing against a non-Liga MX team in the round of 16. Mm-hmm. But Club America is going to be a huge test. I mean, I've been to the Azteca. It is an insane atmosphere. And you think you're adjusted to the altitude. I'm just saying this is someone that's been in the stands. You think you've been in Mexico City to adjust to the altitude, then you climb the stairs to get to your seat, and you suddenly feel like you ran a marathon, even though you've probably gone 100 feet. And the Fire played them last year in the Leagues Cup and lost 0-1 in a game that I think that had a lot of ups and downs with it, with the way that it was refereed and stuff like that. But I mean, it did sort of seem like it was America's game to lose a lot more than it was the Fire's to win. I don't know if you think that's fair, Alan.
Yeah, that pretty much was the case. It was like at that point, the Fire were like, it would mean the world. And if the Club America all of a sudden lost, it would have been, maybe a quasi embarrassment for them. And yeah, you mentioned there was a lot of refereeing points that were like not on there, as well as issues with fans of Club America causing a bit of disruption in the game. So,
and that's an atmosphere that like the Revs are going to have to deal with. Like, also, I mean, probably realistically, I mean, like both at home and away, because I mean, America, like it is the biggest. I mean, not necessarily the most successful. Like they're second in Liga MX right now, but like the biggest club on the continent. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like the fan base, in terms of like the history and the prestige and stuff like that. And I don't even think that's controversial, really, like historically.
No, I definitely agree with you. And the Revs are they're set to play them on a Tuesday at 9 p.m. at Gillette Stadium. From talking with fans, they know that there's going to be 25,000 fans in the stadium, and at least 23,000 of them will be Club America fans.
Yeah, 100%.
If we get to that number.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's what kind of it is not great about like the like later kickout times and stuff like that, because what it does is it knocks any like American casuals out, but like the America fans that are living, within legitimately any amount you can drive in one day and back in like 24-hour day of Boston will be there. Yeah,
it's gonna be a nightmare. It's gonna be really busy.
That was the same thing in the Leagues Cup match, where I mean the match that they had in the group stage against Pueblo was fairly mixed in terms of the like fandom, but Club America, I mean, like that match sold out in minutes, and there were people that were like, even though there was like a giant sign that said sold out, like around the like the people were still showing up trying to get tickets that day, just because like that's the passion of this fan base.
Yeah, and they also like had the supporter section of the Fire like basically like almost caged in. Like they installed like barriers between the sections, and it felt like we were the away end in our own stadium. So it's
going to be interesting to see how not only fans but as well as like the players, the coaches, how they adapt to this atmosphere. Caleb Porter, before they even played Alajuelense in the second leg, was like, it's one of my goals, it's one of my dreams to play at the Azteca. Like, I'm ready for the experience, but the Revs need to get it done at home first before they go to the Azteca, because they don't want a result like when they played Pumas at home, won 3-0, and then went to Pumas and lost in penalties after blowing the 3-0 aggregate lead. So they have to get it done in Foxborough and then hope to do something at the Azteca.
And before they get a chance to get it done at home in CONCACAF Champions Cup, of course, is the match that they've got against the Fire, which is why we're talking to you this Saturday. So it's going to be the Fire's second matinee in a row for the Fire. This time, I guess, I think an hour earlier, because I think it starts at 1:00 Eastern, which is noon here. So how do you think the team has performed in league play, and how do you think they're going to line up against the Fire this Saturday?
So it's going to be a shifted lineup just a little bit. We have 3 guys away on international duty. Our starting goalkeeper, Enric Ravas, he will be away with Slovakia. More than likely, Earl Edwards Jr. will slide into the starting role spot. He started a handful of games last year. He's a veteran goalkeeper. Really good person, really good player. I think that things will translate well with him. Next missing is Esmir Baraktarovic. He's with the U.S. men's Olympic team. And then midfielder Noel Buck is with the England U19s. Esmir's
still feels like a big loss, doesn't it?
I would say now the Esmir loss is bigger than losing Noel. Noel hasn't been starting games really this season. He's came off the bench. He's made a couple of starts, but Esmir really has been that guy really since the injury to Dylan Barrero. So with him leaving the lineup, I would assume that Nacho Heel, Carlos Hill's brother, will probably slide into Esmir's place. Those two have been kind of flip-flopping on playing time there. And with Buck, that just leaves you a valuable asset coming off the bench that you don't have. But with those three missing, the Revs will likely line up in a 4-2-3-1. Or Edwards Jr. probably in the goal with DeJuan Jones at left back, Kessler and Romney at center back. Right back could be a toss-up between Nick Lima and Andrew Farrell. I would assume they go with Lima over his form as of late. And then in your defensive midfield spots, likely you'll have Mark Anthony Kay and Matt Polster if he's healthy. He missed this past week's match. He wasn't on the bench. He wasn't in the 11. Could be rest. I haven't really heard anything regarding that. But Matt Polster would be the number one option in that spot if he is
former
healthy.
Chicago Fire player Matt Polster, and still someone that I think a lot of the fan base really misses and wishes that he was still in a Fire uniform.
Also to note, reserve captain. He is the second captain. He's the assistant captain essentially when Carlos Heel is not playing. So that is new. That is new.
And he was a leader when in his time with the Fire, like obviously much earlier in his career as well. So I think that's one of those things that I think the Fire have felt like they've been missing over the past few seasons.
Yeah. And then rounding out the lineup, it would be Nacho Heel, Carlos Heel, Tomas Shankalai, and likely Giacomo Vrioni up top. But that's how I expect them to line up. The only concerns I have with this team so far that started the season is goals. In Champions League play, they've been scoring. In MLS play, it's only been Carlos Heel and Vrioni as of their last game scoring. It's really, really vital that our DP9 start scoring goals. A lot of fans have been calling for Vrioni to be traded, to be bought down, to be bought out. A lot of people want more goals, more contributions coming from our designated player 9. And he has 2 goals in the last 2 games. Or a consecutive goals to consecutive games. So I hope that his streak catches on, and if he's consistent, I think it will be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, for sure. And the Fire's DP number 9, they just brought in for an 8-figure transfer fee over the offseason, had his first goal in their last match. So that part I think lines up pretty well. I think that they are 2 teams that I think are expecting more out of this season than they got out of the last season. Certainly, I think it's going to be kind of unique. I think that Gillette, out of every venue in MLS, is probably the one that is most similar to Soldier Field in terms of like the size, the atmosphere, the way that it feels. Just like obviously there's some key differences between them. But one of the differences is the fact that Gillette is a turf field where Soldier Field is grass, not always great grass, as we've seen a number of times.
Especially not after a Rammstein concert.
Or a college football game the day before, or it is like grass has its virtues, but it's certainly durability is not necessarily one of them.
Especially if they plan on having Northwestern there, since their field is getting, or their stadium is getting demolished, and they're building a new one.
Looking forward to the game on Saturday. It seems like a number of Revolution players have certainly like had injuries on that pitch. Do you think that that's something that is happening more often because of the turf or the playing field, or?
I wouldn't necessarily allude a lot of their injuries to the turf. The Revs have had 2 torn ACLs on the turf at Gillette last season. Dylan Barrero went down in April against FC Cincinnati. that was kind of caused due to an awkward slide tackle by, I believe it was Matt Miazga at the time. I think Dylan didn't position his body right, or it put his body in the right way for him to avoid injury. And then DeJuan Jones in Champions Cup play, or Leagues Cup play, I believe it was, had a nasty not DeJuan Jones, Brandon Bye, I'm sorry, had a one-on-one collision that led for his ACL to go as well. I know a lot of people compare the turf that we have in Foxborough to that in Atlanta. It's very similar. I know a lot of guys love playing on it. A lot of people hate playing on it, but that also correlates with the conditions in New England. The stadium is legit a wind tunnel. And I know that specifically West Coast teams hate coming to play in New England because just like in Chicago, it's 60 degrees one day and then there's a foot of snow on the ground the next day. And you're like, all right, that's it. Nice.
I think we've all heard LAFC complaining about pretty much anything. You'd almost get the impression they don't like playing soccer as a soccer team.
Yeah, Hugo Lloris came into LA thinking it's going to be sunshines and rainbows. Next thing you know, he's playing in snow in Utah.
His eyebrows are frozen. His eyelids are...
Yeah, makes you reevaluate life choices.
Yeah.
Caleb, Alan, do you have any other questions or anything you want to talk to Caleb about?
Well, I guess really to round out match predictions, one little fun fact is that there hasn't been a win between the Fire and the Revs in Foxborough since 2019. In the past 4 years, all 4 games have ended in a draw. Starting with the game in 2020, which was the last game before MLS shut down because of COVID, which ended in a 1-1 draw. And then the year after a 2-2 draw, the year after a 0-0 draw, and the year after that, last year, a 3-3 draw. Are we going to see something else other than a draw?
I'll even add to that. The last time Chicago beat the Revs was May 8th of 2019.
Yeah.
So, in my honest opinion, if the Revs come out and play the way that they did in the second half against Cincinnati with more drive, more or less the last 30 minutes, where they play more of like a smash mouth soccer, I think it would be a close game regardless. Honestly, I think 2-1 win. If not 2-1, it will be a 1-1 draw. I think it will be dependent on Giacomo Vrioni and what he produces. Carlos Gil and Tomas Shankly have been very, very consistent this year. The fact that Shankly didn't get newcomer of the year last year, or even I don't even think he was in the top 3 for that. Messi was in over him is outrageous.
It's crazy. Yeah, no, and he also had a fantastic game against the Fire when they played in Chicago in September. Like, just a fantastic game.
Yeah, it should be shocking to really see that, but I think it will be tough for New England to deal with Brian Gutierrez as well as your new DP's signing. I forget.
Hugo Cuypers, yeah. Hugo Cuypers.
Shaqiri.
Shaqiri is actually called up to international duty, so he will not be available for that match.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so probably we might see like Brian Gutierrez slipping into the number 10 slot and then like Chris Mueller going out on the wing in his place, maybe.
Doesn't really change a lot, but it does.
Yeah, I think that you're more or less in the same place the Fire fan base is with this, where I think that the most common sentiment is something closer to like addition by subtraction, if we're being honest, given his play over the past, or started the 24 season. Yeah.
So with that, I think New England definitely has an edge then going into the game with Shaqiri missing. I think that's a valid playmaker, but when it comes to New England, like they're only really losing Baraktarovic for goalkeeper. Though Ravas has done well in league play, I think Earl Edwards Jr. replacing him isn't going to change. Like it's not that big of an issue. I know that you guys are without Chris Brady as well. I believe your keeper is no longer. He got called up
to the Olympics. Yeah, to the injury to his former teammate Gabriel Sanina. So it will be Spencer Ritchie starting in net almost certainly in his place, who has played a number of MLS matches for the Fire as well as a number of teams before that, and has been fairly competent in his time with the Fire. On top of being a mentor, I think to both Brady and Slanina before that.
Okay. Yeah. So with those in mind, I think New England probably edges more than I expected. I think it's probably going to be like a 3-1, to be honest. I could see a draw still, but if New England is on all cylinders and Gutierrez doesn't pick up the slack of missing Shaqiri, I don't know really how this game. I don't know how you don't walk away from this game without at least a point. But again, we like drawing against Chicago.
Yeah, and that seems to be the pattern. And I mean that honestly would be my prediction, especially considering. I mean, what it looks like is there's a potential for showers that day. And like, it's just like weather being a spoiler, but I mean, my prediction overall would be a 2-2 draw, just given all things considered with the top to down lineups. And, just especially considering that I think that, both teams just don't seem to really want to get a win against each other. Like I can't really explain it. Like I remember being in the press box for the game last September, and I was just like, it felt like there were separate games that were being played at different points, but in the end, everyone just seemed very contented to settle for a draw.
Yeah, I was thinking very similar to like a 1-1 draw, that it's just going to be fairly even. I feel like there's still a bit of shifting that needs to be figured out on both sides.
You did mention that there was the wind is a factor at Farnborough, and when you think like the wind was just got an assist for Kellyn Acosta's goal last Saturday, so
that was hilarious.
It was it was just one of those MLS things that you're just like, you're there and you see it and it's amazing. So
yeah.
Maybe the wind gets another, I don't know. Is that the primary assist? Not to take one away from Brady, or the MLS assist? I don't know. I guess we'll have to see.
Amen. I say to that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. I just think every time Chicago and the Revs play, they either both want to win really, really bad, or they're both horrible. There's no middle ground.
Yeah.
There's no middle ground.
Yeah, no, like certainly I think the last time they met in towards the end of the season last year, it was like they both wanted to win, but not at the same time. It was like no one was going 90 minutes in that game, which I think was one of the issues.
Yeah.
Well, again, like we really thank you for the your time and your predictions. So before we let you go, you've been covering the Revs for a while. Where can people find you?
You could find all of my work, my articles at prostamerica.com. That's PROSTAMERIKA.com. Once you get to the site, you can hover over the MLS icon and then go down to New England, tap that, and all my articles will show up. And if you want, you can follow me on Twitter. That's at Caleb, CALEB, PONGRATZ 10. And you'll see me talk about the Celtics, the Bruins, the Revs, anything New England, and probably like some memes. That's kind of it.
Sweet. Yeah.
Love that for you. All right. Well, thank you once again, Caleb, for joining us. And hopefully we will see a great game, maybe another wind assist, but this time in New England. Yep. So
appreciate the time and look forward to it. Let's just hope that there's, some better refereeing than what we've seen over the past few weeks.
That is true. MLS pay refs.
let's hope everyone has fun.
Yeah. What if the real win is the friends we make along the way?
All right. All right. Well, as always, I have been on the Pole with a Goal, joined by co-host Tim, DJ who had to dip earlier, as well as special guest Caleb Pongratz. Oh, thank you once again for joining. And as always, Caleb, you don't have to say this, but you perfectly much can. Come on, you men in red.
Which is fair. No, it's fair. It's fair.